Hi guys again. So this is our language for week 2, day 1, and we are going to be talking about compound and complex sentences today. So make sure you have, where's my book? Have page 279, 280 torn out. And I am going to go ahead and share my screen with you. Okay, so let me see. The cloud just went in front of the sun and it's not so glaring on my screen anymore. Let's see. Share screen. Oh, good. I love it when it works the first time. Okay, so we are on sentences compound and complex. Now the curriculum's done a really great job building you up to this because we have been able to know what a dependent clause and what an independent clause is. But let's go ahead and review. Look at the top of the yellow box. It says a clause is a group of words that has a subject and a verb. Last week they said a clause is a group of words that has a complete thought. Okay? An independent clause, is a complete thought, the independent clause. So it can stand alone as a sentence. If you are independent, you can do it by yourself. You can stand alone. A compound sentence, let's go ahead. I want you to highlight this. A compound sentence contains two or more independent clauses joined by a comma and a coordinating conjunction, and, but, or. So I could say, let's look at the example. It's a really good one. You can ride the elevator or you can climb the stairs. What is the subordinating conjunction in that sentence? Good. If you said or, you are 100% right. The comma or is your coordinating, your coordinating conjunction. The two independent clauses are you can ride the elevator and you can climb the stairs. Can both of those sentences stand on their own? You can ride, you can climb. Yep, they can. Okay, so these two are independent clauses. This is an independent clause and this is an independent clause. And they're joined by a comma and a subordinating conjunction. That is a compound sentence. Okay. Let's move on to, let's look at dependent clauses. A dependent clause is not a complete thought, right? If you are dependent on somebody for something, you can't quite do it by yourself yet. You still need a little bit of help. So a dependent clause cannot stand alone as a sentence. A dependent clause begins with a subordinating conjunction such as after, although, because, since, until, when, and while. Ooh, that's really good to know. Let's look at this. Use a different color for you. A dependent clause begins with a subordinating conjunction. Do compound sentences begin with a subordinating conjunction? No, they don't. They have to have a independent clause, subordinating conjunction with a comma, then another independent clause. Okay, let's look. I won't go on the ride unless you go with me. Ooh, let's look at that. So this is an example of a complex sentence. A complex sentence contains an independent clause. It can stand by itself. It has a subject and a verb and no subordinating conjunction unless only the compound sentences have that comma subordinating conjunction. Okay, so a complex sentence contains an independent clause and, that's a good word here, one or more dependent clauses. A comma follows a dependent clause at the beginning of a complex sentence. So let's look at this first one that they've given us. It says, I won't go on the ride. Is that a complete thought? I will go. Yes, that is. Okay. That is an independent clause right here. Then we have the words unless you go with me. Is that a dependent clause? It is because it begins with a subordinating conjunction unless. So this right here, ladies and gentlemen, is an example of a complex sentence. Don't worry if you're having a little trouble. These are complex ideas that we're working through today. Okay, let's look at the second one. The second one says, unless you go with me, comma, I won't go on the ride. Okay, let's look at the first part. All they did was switch those two parts. Let's see. Unless you go with me. Is that a dependent clause or an independent clause? It's dependent because of this subordinating conjunction, unless. So this is a dependent clause, then they have a comma, then they have the independent clause. Remember, complex sentences, they're all kinds of crazy. They have a dependent clause, they have an independent clause, and they're joined together. Okay, that's a complex sentence. Compound, you have an independent clause joined with another independent clause with a comma and a subordinating conjunction of and, but, or. Okay, let's look at our guided practice. It says, underline the independent clauses. They can stand by themselves. And circle the conjunction in each sentence. Okay. Fill in the circle to tell whether each sentence is compound or complex. Well, let's look at the first one. Gustave Eiffel, ooh, that's why there's a picture of the Eiffel Tower there. Gustave Eiffel studied the science of metals while he was in school. So we have to kind of look, and actually when we're reading, we kind of pause where the sentence would naturally pause. Okay, so if I want you to look at the first part, Gustave Eiffel studied the science of metals while he was in school. Which would be our independent clause, can stand alone as a sentence? If you said Gustave Eiffel studied the science of metals, you are correct. That is our independent clause. Now, the directions also tell us to circle the conjunction in each sentence. What is our subordinating conjunction? The subordinating conjunctions that we've talked about today are and, but, or, after, although, because, since, until, when, and while. Which one did you hear? If you said while, you are correct. Okay. So we've already established that this right here is an independent clause. It stands alone by itself, right? But the second part, it says, while he was in school. Is that an independent clause or a dependent clause? Can we say while he was in school and it makes a complete thought? No, we cannot. So this is a dependent clause. So when we have an independent clause and a dependent clause joined with a subordinating conjunction, what do we have? We have a complex sentence. So let's circle in complex. And if you are confused and you're thinking this is complex, that's okay. Let's keep going, okay? The best thing you could do is just keep going. And remember, this is practice. So practice, we don't always get everything 100% correct. Practice makes progress, and that's what we're hoping for, some progress. And we're going to get it because you guys are awesome. Number 2, when Eiffel finished school, his first job was designing a metal bridge. Which part of this sentence is independent? What do you think? I'll give you a clue. There's only one independent clause in the sentence. And for those of you paying attention, that means it's a certain type of sentence if there's only one independent clause. Let's see. If you said his first job was designing a metal bridge, you are correct. Because my subject is job, and my verb is, or my verb phrase is was designing, okay? So let's look at the second. So we know this is an independent clause. Second part of the directions say to circle the conjunction. Okay, let's go back to those conjunctions that we're looking at today. We're looking for and, but, or, after, although, because, since, until, when, and while. What is the subordinating conjunction in this one? If you said when, you are 100% correct. Okay, if a clause begins with a subordinating conjunction, it makes that clause dependent. Now, what kind of sentence is it? Is it compound or complex? If you say complex, you are right, but I'm going to show you guys something. The first sentence had an independent clause, a subordinating conjunction, and then a dependent clause. The second sentence had a dependent clause, that's the subordinating conjunction started it, then it had an independent clause. Is that okay? Can they go both ways? Yeah, they can be switched. Independent clause, dependent clause, or vice versa, okay? So let's go down to number 3. Now I'm guessing some of you guys already know what kind of sentence it is because I don't think they'd give us all 3 the same, but We don't know. They might. Let's look at 3. Eiffel was successful, comma, and, I like saying that way, he became known as Europe's master metal builder. Okay, we're going to find independent clauses. Can stand alone as a sentence. Eiffel was successful. Good. He became known as Europe's master metal builder. So we have an independent clause, another independent clause, and guess what? It is joined, and they say to circle it, it is joined by a comma and an and. What do we know? What kind of sentence is it if it's joined by a comma and an and? 2 independent clauses. Joined by the subordinating conjunction. That is a compound sentence. Okay. Now let's look at the next set. Remember, and I know I say this all the time, but I want to remind you, go back and look at it again if you're having difficulty. Okay, number 4, where'd number 7 come from? Combine the sentences using the conjunction in parentheses. Okay, write compound if it is a compound sentence, and write complex if it is a complex sentence. Add a comma if necessary. Okay, let's look at what we have. We have such a tall building of wood would collapse. It would break in the wind. What do you think? Are those 2 independent clauses? I think so. Could we join them with comma or? Is that an option? Let's see. Yeah, look, we can join them with comma or. That is an option. So let's go ahead and do that. If you got something different, hold on to it and we'll go over it with you, then we'll see how correct it is. Okay, remember, practice. Practice makes progress, and that's what we're making today. So let's look. We're going to combine them. Such a tall building of wood, those homophones there, collapse, comma, or it, and we got a lowercase at it would break in the wind, period. Remember, sentences start with capital letters and they end with punctuation. So I'm going to highlight these because I'm a big fan of highlighting. But such a tall building of wood would collapse. Is that a complete thought? Is that an independent clause? Sure is. Let's look at the second part. What if we have it would break in the wind? Is that a complete thought? Sure is. And it's joined by our subordinating conjunction or. So if I have an independent clause joined with a subordinating conjunction to another independent clause, do I have a compound or a complex sentence? I have a compound sentence. So I'm going to write compound in the blank. Okay, let's do one last one together and then you get to try some on your own. Number 5, until. Okay, so guys, before we even start, I want you to look at the subordinating conjunction we're using. We're using until. When we have a compound sentence, we can only use the subordinating conjunctions of and, but, or. So we know automatically we do not have a compound sentence. We are going to have a complex sentence. So let's see if we can make one. And in fact, in number 5, I'm going to write complex because I know I have to have a complex sentence here. Okay. So we have they got better pay and we have men would not work on such a tall building. Where should that go, that until go? Should we say they got better pay until men would not work on such a tall building? Probably not. How about until they got better pay, comma, men would not work on such a tall building? Does that make sense? That makes much more sense. So let's write that. Until they got better pay, excuse me, comma, men would not work on such a tall building. They're smart guys because that is so tall. And back then they didn't have all the safety equipment that we have now in construction. So they're smart men. Okay, this is what you're gonna do. Press pause, okay? Do the back of the paper. Let me look at it real quick. You're doing the exact same thing we did for the first section and you're only doing one of these sentences that we just wrote on the back. Then if you go to apply and write at the bottom, let's see, if you're going to apply and write right here, you're going to listen as your teacher tells you more about the Eiffel Tower and write complex and compound sentences to tell about the Eiffel Tower. Okay. How about we wait till our language get together on Friday? So I'm just like in math, if you're in my math class, highlight this and we're going to come back to this, okay? We'll come back to it when we meet on Friday. I'm excited for it. Okay, go ahead and press pause, and then when you come back, you're going to check your answers from the back of the page. Okay, I am back. Let me share my screen. There we go. Okay, let's look at here. So after you've done this, number one, so it's the same directions. You're going to underline independent clauses. You're going to circle your subordinating conjunction. And then you're going to tell me if it's compound or complex. So number one, we have a dependent clause, wherever you stand in the tower, started with the subordinating conjunction whenever. And then we have an independent clause, you have a great view of Paris. So when you have a dependent clause and an independent clause, you have a complex sentence. Number two, we will visit the tower, independent clause, and conjunction, we will take a tour of the city, independent clause. So two independent clauses joined by that conjunction is a compound sentence. Number three, independent clause, what city will we visit? Joined by the conjunction after. Okay, so if it is an independent clause, then a dependent clause, because it starts with a subordinated conjunction, is a complex sentence. Number four, a spiral staircase was used until it was dismantled in 1983. So we have a spiral staircase was used. That's our independent clause. And then we have a dependent clause of it was dismantled in 1983 or until it was dismantled. So until is our dependent subordinated conjunction, and it's starting our dependent clause. Okay, number five, when you are on the second platform, that's a dependent clause, and it starts with the subordinated conjunction when. You will find the Jules Verne restaurant. That is a what? That is a independent clause, so it makes a complex sentence. Okay, I want you to check 6 and 7, see how you did there. And then let's look at 8. We have a compound sentence because we're joining two independent clauses. We're joining the Eiffel Tower was the tallest building in the world for 30 years. And then we're joining now many buildings are taller. And it's joined together with a subordinating conjunction of but. So guys, you did great today. If you have trouble, go ahead, rewind, go back over the lesson part of it. And if you're still having difficulty or like, what is going on? Contact me and we can get together on Zoom. Okay, see you tomorrow. Goodbye.